Game time again. I've got the Nin versus the Mimeoplasm. And I know that I promised that I was going to play some Aloro games. They are definitely coming. But I've just been playing with Nin a little bit, just to get reacquainted with it, because I haven't really played in a month. And it's one of those decks where you really got to stay sharp on it, or some of the interactions start to get a little bit more difficult and less instinctual. I have a pretty solid draw. It's got Expedition Map, only 2 land, but that's at least an Ancient Tomb or red source. He's going first with no turn 1 play, which is great for me. I see 2 mana and a green. I'm thinking, God damn it, don't be Sylvan. But fortunately, it's just Life from the Loam. Still good for him, given that how much he likes Dredge and he's got a fetch land. So my plan here probably is to go get, well, it kind of depends on what he does. I do have a counterspell for defense, but I'm thinking I probably wanted to go get a red source or possibly an Ancient Tomb. I guess getting an Ancient Tomb allows me to play a Tomb and a Mind Stone, which activates Forbid. I don't have the triple blue for 2 of these triple blue spells in my hand, which is a little annoying, but the deck, of course, does have lots of blue sources, so it's not too big of a deal. So we're going to let the situation dictate it. I decide I'm going to just go get a 3rd blue source since I'm not really under any pressure right now. And I top decked the top, which is fantastic, especially combined with the Misty Rainforest. End of turn, Intuition. Pretty good card, quite expensive, so definitely he's playing the real deck. Skithrix, Reanimate, Jin. So as you know, Intuition lets me put 1 card in his hand and 2 in the graveyard. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer. Basically, I want this thing in his hand. It's by far the most scary card, given the fact that I have Cryptic Command to stop Skithrix. And obviously I want their cheap Reanimate spell in the graveyard too. So he puts Jin in his hand, plays a bird. We're like thinking, come on, see some land. Grim Monolith, Merchant Scroll, Force. So the question is, do you reshuffle here or not? And I ultimately, because I have all these extra blue cards in my hand, and often it just comes down to 1 critical turn where he goes for a Reanimate spell backed up with some counter magic, I decide I'm just going to keep the Force of Will and expect to see land off the next 3 after a reshuffle. So I draw, and I'm going to just sack my land right now and search. And sure enough, Steam Vents. One thing I do see with a lot of people with Divining Top, when I play against people who have issues with their land, is that they don't aggressively go after lands with Divining Top. They just expect to draw it next turn, and I feel like land drops are one of the most important things you can hit every turn. It's absolutely worth it recasting top in order to draw an extra card to get that land into play. So we're going to do that right now and continuously do it for a number of different turns. So here we go. In a second here, I've got a Fruit Ninja playing kid in the room. I'm going to ask him to leave for a second. Alright, here we go again. So it just says done. So we're just going to do that same trick, play a top and draw a card, play another land. It's very nice to have 3 land on top after shuffling. End of turn, he casts Snapcaster, obviously going to get Intuition. And I gave a little thought to countering here, but ultimately, again, I want to be able to defend twice on his turn against a Reanimate spell. So I feel like, well, this is bad. I don't really care about the Snapcaster Mage. So he's basically just casting Intuition again. I didn't counter it the first time, so I'm not going to counter it the second time. And I see Thirst for Knowledge, Frantic Search, Windfall. So, dear watcher, which of these 3 would you let him have? Obviously, they're all bad. One of them is particularly bad. It's Windfall. So this is a card you certainly don't want him to resolve more than anything. But at the same time, these are both instants. And Windfall is a sorcery. And I decide that I'd much rather have him just play Windfall on his turn. Plus, it's a little bit of a gambit in the sense that clearly it's the card that he wants to cast the most. And by giving it to him, I don't know, maybe he would just figure I don't have any counter spells. I don't know, it's hard to say. But he casts Windfall main step because he has to. And I'm just going to counterspell it. Normally I would like to cast a more expensive card in my hand, but I see Forbid, Future Sight, and Top waiting in the wings here, which means that that's a potential lock on his entire game if I can get it running. So I've got actually a long-term game plan here. it's going to revolve around using Mystical Tutor to get mana drain on a big spell, hopefully like the Mimeoplasm, and I will fetch mana drain, use mana drain to fuel out Future Sight and top on the same turn, draw a bunch of cards, and then be fortified behind Forbid and Force of Will. So he Life from the Loam's 3 lands. And he's got Cephalid Colosseum in here, which is actually quite awesome. I'm a little surprised that he doesn't pursue it more aggressively, given that he's got that clunky Djinn in his hand too. There's top. So I'm going to play Mind Stone. And I'm not playing the top because I want to be able to Cryptic Command and draw a card here. I guess I still have the Reliquary Tower in play. I could have done the whole top cycling thing again. Sylvan Primordial. That looks like a great Cryptic Command target. There's the tower. The reason I didn't play top and draw a card immediately with it is because I don't know that the top card of my deck underneath the tower is another land. And so if I go and I do that trick in order to get another land drop, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to hit a land drop next turn. And I didn't need the extra mana, so I didn't feel like it was worth recasting the top right away. There is a land on top, so I feel a little foolish. So we're playing Nin right here. And I'm planning on the trick right now. And the reason I'm deploying Nin is because if he does cast another big spell, and I decide I don't want a Future Sight, I have the option of Mystical Tutoring into Mana Drain and using Mana Drain on Nin to just draw a lot of cards right away. But of course, the top trick is preferential to that. So there's Colosseum. Plays Fleshbag Marauder, which I don't care about, of course. And there's the Mimeoplasm. And exactly as planned, we deploy Mystical Tutor, Mana Drain. So this really could not have worked out any better. Perfect setup. There's the top, 5 floating. Play Future Sight. So Snapcaster Mage on top too, which is fantastic for combining later in this turn with, or later on another turn with Mana Drain. Put this over here. Play the top, draw a card. Move that down. There's an island, I'll play that. Coalition Relic, I'd rather just draw that, see what's on top. There's Bribery, which I'm sure is super powerful against him given some of the creatures I've seen already. But we're going to wait a turn. I could just tap out and cast it and use Force of Will to protect, but he still has 4 cards in his hand, which makes me kind of nervous, especially with the Colosseum out, because he can draw 3 and discard potentially 3 nasty reanimate targets. Like, I know he has Djinn in his hand, and then cast 2 reanimate spells, and I can only stop 1, so I'm going to just wait. I'm just going to draw another card, since I only need 4 mana to do Snapcaster Mana Drain. And this gives me another blue card, a less painful blue card to throw away to Force Will. Shackles on top too. So even though he's seen me draw a Snapcaster Mage, he decides he wants to pay 10 mana main step to cast Djinn. If ever there was a juicy Mana Drain target, I'd say it's that guy. Thank you very much. So we've entered the gleeful phase of the game. 10 mana in my pool. God, it's just ridiculous now. How did I manage to do that? Okay. Just drawing cards here. I say Hinder, I'll draw that. Ponder, cast that. Blah, blah, blah. Draw the Muddle and cast the other 2. Signet. Cast Merchant Scroll. And I'm just going to go get a free counter, given all the mana I have in play. Condescend on top. So now I've got 5 left. I figure at this point it's time for Bribery, now that I've got a counter on top. And we see this. We see a very good, well-built, fully decked out reanimation deck. Minus the dual lands? Does he have the dual lands in here? Underground River? Yeah, I guess he doesn't have the good dual lands. I don't see Underground Sea. I don't see Bayou. I don't see Tropical Island. So he's missing just those things. But he does have a lot of other good, expensive cards in here, like, I don't know, he's got Vampiric Tutor, for example. Flash. Looks pretty solid. How many reanimation spells is he running? I guess like about maybe 5 or 6. It's one of the things I find with this deck. It's very hard to figure out exactly how many reanimation spells you should run. I've tried to build it a few times myself, and I've never really been happy with the list. I always feel like it's just not quite doing what I need it to do. It's very hard to get a good mixture of creatures, permission, and reanimation to get them all working in tandem. Sometimes you get really lucky. In a lot of games, you're just drawing the wrong stuff. Clearly, it's one of the best decks, though, that you can build in the format. So, oh yeah, getting back to what to take. Obvious choices. Terastodon. Teferi's kind of nice, too, given how many counters I have in my hand and how much it's going to control them. But I can, with the Rewind, I kind of have the Teferi effect anyway. Glenelendra stops multiple reanimation spells. Runescarred Demon, of course, good to get a tutor, but I don't really know what I would tutor for at this point. And so ultimately, Terastodon is tempting, but he does have Life from the Loam and a pile of lands, so it's not really that effective right now. And so ultimately, I feel like Vorinclex is the answer, because not only does that make it so I've got 8 mana in play on his turn, and it combines extremely well with Rewind, but it'll just make Future Sight Top completely insane next turn. So we go with Vorinclex. He taps 2 mana to Rift his own Vorinclex. That's what Rewind's for. Turn 4 mana into 10. So he taps out all of his mana here. Oh yeah, and he's casting Mimeoplasm again. And I have a million options to counter it, but I'll just use the one on top of my deck instead. At which point he knows the writing's on the wall, time to concede. So not really a particularly close game. I feel like definitely was able to fortify my position early and make some good decisions with intuition to kind of keep him always on the back foot. And just a pretty good demonstration of what Nin does. More games to come, and I promise some of them will involve Oloro. See you guys later.